Welcome to the Breakout Growth Podcast, where Sean Ellis and Ethan Garr interview leaders from the world's fastest growing companies to get to the heart of what's really driving their growth. And now, here are your hosts, Sean Ellis and Ethan Garr.
All right, in this week's episode of the Breakout Growth Podcast, Ethan Garr and I chat with Brendan Candon, CEO of Sideline Swap, a marketplace for sports gear. So it's pretty common to have a closet or even a garage full of skis, sticks, and balls. And if you have kids that are involved in athletics, then you probably know the cost of upgrading that gear from year to year can really add up. So when Brendan wanted to get back into lacrosse after playing in college, he brought some used gear from a friend, which sparked the conversation. They realized there might be an untapped opportunity and turned that conversation into an exciting growth story. So Ethan, what stood out to you?
Oh man, Sean, this was a fun one. The underlying theme I think that really stood out for me the whole time was that Brendan and Sideline Swap really seem to look at the world through this lens that just continually asks, how do we all win? How do we help buyers find what they need wherever they are? How do we make it easy for sellers to trust this marketplace, to avoid payment problems and so on? And how can we help our partners grow their businesses? And I think when nothing is a zero-sum game for them as a company, it just powers these growth loops that continue to drive the business.
Yeah, for sure. The trade-in events that Brendan mentioned are a great example. Yeah, I'm not going to give it all away in the introduction here, but everyone wins with these. They win. So consumers win, to sporting goods stores, and even local sports teams and charities. That win-win outlook on the world seems to really serve them well.
Yeah, I think our listeners are going to learn a lot from this conversation. It started with that classic chicken and egg marketplace challenge where, network effects and cold start problems abound. But they started with a problem that they understood. They figured out a hyper-focused starting point to validate the concept. And, they did the hard work. They even seeded the supply side of the marketplace early on themselves to kickstart that flywheel.
Yeah. And they had guts. They took big swings. They trusted their instincts, and boy, did they grind. In fact, they continue to grind, but it's paying off. They recently brought in an investment from DSG Ventures, which is Dick's Sporting Goods, kind of their venture fund. And that's just excellent validation of several years of figuring this all out.
Definitely. And it sounds like such an exciting company to work for. They have a big mission, which Brendan explained, and I have every reason to believe that they're going to fulfill that mission and continue to accelerate. I mean, really interesting company. And I think for anyone in our audience, Brendan told us they're looking to fill roles for, product designer, SEO content writers, and also some roles to support those trade-in events we mentioned. So yeah, make sure you check out their careers page. Sounds like a really cool company.
Yeah, very cool company and just an excellent conversation. So should we jump into it, or do you want to just keep droning on?
Well, it's probably better if I stop jabbering. So yeah, let's get to it.
Sounds good. Hey, Brendan, welcome to the Breakout Growth Podcast.
Hey, Sean, Ethan, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. And as you mentioned, Ethan is here as well. Hey, Ethan.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Brendan. Good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So you're the co-founder and CEO of Sideline Swap, and we may have some listeners that are familiar with it, but there's probably quite a few that aren't. So it'd be great if you give us a quick introduction to what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sideline Swap is an online marketplace for buying and selling sporting goods. Easy way to think of it, really high level, is we are like an eBay or a Poshmark for sports, where we connect buyers and sellers to exchange sporting goods. And we do a lot of the marketplace basics like you'd expect. So we have hundreds of thousands of listings on the platform listed by sellers all over the US and Canada. We provide buyer guarantees for people when they buy and sell through the platform. We provide pricing guidance, shipping. So it's the leading marketplace in sports. We started it in 2015. There's a little period before there. We were nights and weekends, but since then, we've had a couple million users join the platform. They've bought and sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of inventory through Sideline Swap. And over the course of the life cycle of the business, we've raised $15 million in venture capital. We've got about 30 people on the team. It's a remote team, mostly based on the East Coast of the US. And we've been on a couple like the top 100 marketplace lists. Andreessen Horowitz puts out a list every year. So Sideline Swap's been on there for the last 3 years or so. And maybe just the last thing to add is that since we started the business, it's pretty much been a pure play marketplace where everything buyers and sellers send inventory to each other directly. But in the last year or so, business has evolved a little bit to include a new thing we call the trade-in platform, where we work with retailers and brands to enable resale wherever athletes shop and play. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it, but you can now, have pop-up events around the country where you could bring in your used sporting goods. We'll evaluate it on the spot. We typically pay you in the retailer's gift card, take the inventory from you, and then we do the work to sell it. So we resell that on the marketplace. So we've got both elements, mostly the core marketplace where it's buying and selling direct, but then we also have this new element of the trade-in platform to make it even easier to sell your stuff.
Yeah. So one curiosity question on it. Having followed eBay over the years, where it used to be, mostly used items, increasingly you see a lot of new items on eBay. Do you have some new items that get in the mix, or is it pretty much all pre-owned merchandise?
So there's definitely a mix. I mean, I agree. That's actually probably one of our initial insights is when we were looking at, well, why can we do this when eBay already exists? I think there's a period, especially there's a period where eBay really focused on competing with Amazon, and their seller base shifted more towards businesses and a lot more new inventory, overstock inventory, but also just new, and less people selling out of their homes their used stuff, especially in the sporting goods category. And so we've really focused on unlocking inventory from people's homes, and that's the big opportunity we saw. Most of the inventory is used, but there is about 40% that's new, but it's still in most cases actually from individuals. So mom bought you a hockey stick, you didn't like it. And so you can find a lot of really good deals on like new or new stuff, but it's usually still coming from an individual who just never really used it. And you can imagine how many people get excited to try a new sport and then maybe try it once or never actually get out there. And Sideline Swap's a great place.
But yeah, I can imagine other people.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk to you about the pop-up events. You told me a little bit about those, but I think I saw on LinkedIn you were having like 5 or 6 of them just this weekend. So it's obviously become an interesting part of your business. So we'll dive into that. But maybe, you got into it a little bit, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you came up with the idea and how you got into this. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for us, Sideline Swap came out of a personal pain point, a conversation that my co-founder, Anthony Piazza, and I had soon after I graduated from college. I'd played lacrosse at Holy Cross, and while I was there, I was given equipment for free. We were a Division I program, and so kind of forgot how expensive some of this stuff was. Went to play in men's league, and to buy a new set of equipment would have cost me about $500. So ended up buying it off of Anthony, and the two of us started this conversation about how, it's kind of crazy. No one had made it easier for athletes to buy and sell their gear online. Obviously, eBay and Craigslist were out there, but most people we knew weren't selling there, and that most families we knew had garages full of equipment. I'm one of 5. Our house growing up was just filled with all types of sports equipment. And so we felt like, and I was also a Play It Again sports customer. So Play It Again is this franchise of used sporting goods stores. It's been around since the 80s, but never really went online. And so I had shopped used growing up. I had continued to do the peer-to-peer transaction offline. And then we had this conversation, and it quickly was a light bulb moment of, and that's a really interesting idea. And so we shifted into looking at what else is out there. And we kind of had some intuition around what was in the market in terms of Play It Again and eBay, doing that research of, well, what type of products on eBay and who's selling on eBay today, and quickly building some conviction around, all right, there's a really interesting opportunity here. And that, we were looking at the verticalization of eBay that was happening around that time. So this is like 2012, 2013, Reverb, Poshmark, StockX were all just coming into the scene. And it was pretty clear that you would have this fracturing of eBay around specific customer verticals. And sporting goods, as we dug in, was the 5th largest category on eBay. Played again, it was a $500 million business, which was mostly just a function of how many stores they had. So we felt like there was this huge opportunity there. We felt like we knew the customer problem. We didn't have the technical backgrounds. We hadn't spent time working in tech companies or marketplaces, but we felt like we really understood the customer, and so we kind of just went for it. And so it was an interesting learning process, like getting the product off the ground and figuring out how to solve a lot of the marketplace challenges. But I think from the beginning, we just felt like we had a strong understanding of the customer, and that helped us get started.
It's a difficult business to like do on a small scale, right? I mean, like did you have to sort of kind of go all in, or was there a bit of an MVP, or did you try to play around on eBay to see what you could learn? Or?
Yeah, I think that's right. So we always felt like the market was huge, and that there was but because you're taking a 12% cut of the transaction, you have to get really big in order for the business to work. So what we did was we raised some friends and family money. We hired a development shop, and we got a first product off the ground. So we kind of had to build out. And there's some new tech out there now that helps marketplaces get started as more of like a tech as a out of a box. But we had to build a custom platform from day one. We were able to get it. Now I'd look at it as an MVP. At the time, it was like, well, yeah, we were really excited about it. Which is a good lesson in hindsight, that like, you'd look back if it had to be perfect at that point, right? You launched too late, but we were able to get what was an MVP off the ground, which allowed people to list product, to communicate back and forth, and to buy and sell. Basically, they had to purchase through PayPal, and they had to like create their own shipping labels. There was a ton of friction, but we got this MVP live in 2012. And what we saw, and we focused on one niche within sports. So we focused on lacrosse because that was the category we knew the best, and we had connections, and we were able to seed the marketplace with inventory. So we launched the marketplace with basically like 20 of our friends who had just graduated college and had really cool college sports equipment, Maryland, Duke, Notre Dame. And so we got them to list first. And we did like all this growth hacking of taking that inventory, posting it into forums and Facebook groups, and getting buyers to come over and then converting them. But what we learned really quickly is that there was definitely an interest in this, that, we had gained momentum with users, and, 20 people listing 200 items quickly turned into thousands of people listing tens of thousands of items. And that was enough momentum for us to keep going and to keep building from there. We eventually had to raise another round, kind of rebuild the marketplace based on some of those key initial learnings. Specifically, like the chat feature was super popular, and it was like disconnected from transactions. So we had to rebuild it where we kind of pulled everything together. You chat within the transaction experience, buyer guarantees, payments, and shipping were all kind of introduced. And then that's where things started to kind of really take off. But we definitely had to we felt like we had to launch enough of an MVP to really validate the idea, which is like, can you get people to list, which is what wasn't happening previously. And I think that would have been hard to do if we were just selling through eBay or trying to connect people on like Instagram or something.
Mm-hmm. And so you said that you started with lacrosse, and did you sort of build out one sport at a time, or once you had lacrosse, you kind of plug every sport in there?
So we started with lacrosse, and we stayed with that for a little while. And then our growth strategy has really been to think about sports the way like Uber would think about cities, right? You need to build liquidity in each sport in order for it to work. There's other things like merchandising is really important. So if we're going to launch successfully in skiing, the skiers expect a certain level of detail when they're shopping, and that builds trust quickly. So we basically went like lacrosse and hockey, then baseball and skiing and snowboarding and golf, and we've kind of it's gotten easier with each additional category, and now
kind of have a playbook around them.
Yeah, exactly. And you have we always made it a sports marketplace. It was never a lacrosse marketplace, and there were other things, but we didn't do any marketing to drive buyers to a category we weren't focused on the sell side. So that was kind of the growth strategy.
So when you talked about marketplace challenges, obviously the one that often comes up is kind of like, it's either really hard to get the buyers or really hard to get the inventory. Which has been harder for you, and how have you overcome that challenge?
Yeah. So the harder side for us was the supply side. And it does ebb and flow a little bit at points. We need a little bit more demand, but for the most part, the supply side has been where the challenge was, and that was from day one. And so we've really spent most of our time and most of our energy on figuring out how do we get more inventory into the marketplace. What we see is that if we could get good used inventory into the marketplace, we can sell it through SEO, through paid marketing. The economics work for us, but it's less. It's definitely harder to do that than it is harder to get the supply side on the marketplace. And so yeah, that's been our big focus, and I think it's because I guess like, no, we're not moving inventory from eBay to Sideline, right? We're not taking market share. It's really getting people to do something they've never done before, and that was the hard part.
So I was going to ask, do you do most people like list the items in multiple places, or do you have like exclusivity on the items they're listing?
I think that behavior has evolved a little bit over time. We still see that about half of our sellers have never sold anywhere else before.
Okay.
So our conversion journey usually is we get you as a buyer. So there's a lot more people shopping for sporting goods than looking to sell. So we get you to come into the marketplace shopping around, and then, people like me are selling here, I could sell too. And we convert you to a seller. And then once they sell, a lot of that times that is not exclusive, but it's unique to Sideline. I think that's where, if you shop Sideline, we have more unique inventory than anybody else in sports. But you do have power sellers who sell on multiple platforms. And so there's definitely a little bit of that, but the majority of our inventory is unique to Sideline because of the way we think about acquisition and how we convert buyers into sellers.
And is it always shipped somewhere, or is there any like kind of local marketplace to it?
There's no local pickup right now. What we see is that typically, the way our customers shop on Sideline is they're looking for a very specific product. So if you're looking for CCM jet speed hockey skates at size 10 and a certain width, the likelihood that that's in your pickup range is low. And that's why we think Facebook Marketplace and other local marketplaces are not solving this problem the way customers shop. And so we always thought eBay was actually a better experience than Craigslist in this category for a couple of reasons. You really want to be able to find the specific SKU you're looking for. And shipping's not that expensive. Like the average product ships for under $15, and you're saving 70%, up to 70%. So it makes sense to ship it.
Okay.
I think when we first chatted, I was telling you I had just been looking for a pair of used ski boots because I don't ski very often. I just needed them for kind of one particular day out, basically. And I had this, I was saying, like, I hadn't found Sideline Swap at the time, but I was saying that the concern was like, I don't really know what the right size is. It kind of feels like the kind of thing you have to put on and try. But it seems like you said you'd be surprised people do actually buy sized goods, and like, is that, do you think just because you've built such a trusted marketplace as a whole that people are like, well, I can always take this and resell it, or is it more that people know what they're buying most of the time?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you have ways that you could build trust in the marketplace that really do drive new behavior, right? And get you to feel confident in it. So good, like, and it's, Airbnb has a lot of lessons around this, right? Like how much energy they invest in good photographs of an apartment. In our case, it was about good photos and a lot of photos, accurate descriptions. We also provide like sizing guidance on top of the description. So if you say a boot size 10, we could help you understand how that fits, right? So we provide layers of content on top of it that the seller might not. And then the chat is a huge feature. So you could talk to the person you're buying it from, hey, I wear this size shoe, I tip my foot, and they could act like the sales associate would in a store. And a lot of times they've used the product, they bought it. So you're buying from someone who really knows it. And that helps you increase your confidence as well. And then we have the buyer guarantee, and you can sell it. You could always, like if you're buying it, someone else is probably buying it. So you could always sell it back into the marketplace as well. So I think all those things factor into it. But and then you also get a lot of people who have worn the product before, right? And that's where it's a great, easy use case of I've used this product. It's now a little bit beat up. I need to get another one. I don't feel like spending as much for it. And you can just go and find the replacement product. It's a great use case for that. But we also see, a lot of people coming in and shopping for the first time.
Gotcha. Sean, do you have another question before I jump into next one? Or
I had one on the tip of my tongue, but lost it.
No worries. So one thing I was curious, I've been working with a couple of marketplace businesses, and they're very aggressive when it comes to conversion rate optimization. I was curious. I'm assuming that's pretty universal across marketplace businesses, but is that for you a big area of focus? Is that a lot of where your experimentation energy goes?
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about conversion. I think in terms of like testing and experimentation, I'd probably be lying if I said we're like ruthless about that. I think what we've found, we've tried at times, and I think what we've found is that there's areas that we can be like test and much faster and like without spending a ton of resources. So marketing creative, for example, like what marketing assets we use and what copy we use, we test that constantly. But things in product with a small team, it's hard to invest the resources of building multiple versions of everything and testing. Yeah. So the other thing with the marketplace that's challenging is that we'd run these tests and the inventory is constantly changing, right? It's not like a SaaS business or a Shopify business where you're driving, 1,000 eyeballs to the same product. Nothing changes except the button color. In our case, we're driving you to a pair of hockey skates. That pair of hockey skates sells. Now we're sending you to a different pair of hockey skates that might be a different price, different pictures. And so there's a lot of variables that made it challenging with a marketplace because you don't control everything. So what we've done is focused more on where we get our traffic from, where we get our inventory from. So testing around those things of higher quality inventory, also like quality of traffic that we can get through certain channels, and the testing we could do in those channels. And then within the product, it's more around certain user experiences. So within the checkout flow, within sign up, those are areas where we try to test a little bit more or adding a new feature. And so I think that's been a learning about, I think you have this aspiration to test everything because of the way people talk about this. And I think for a small team, you have to pick and choose of what you can test and not get caught up in debating the things like, well, the inventory changed and the test is now no longer valid. And that way you can move fast and make smart decisions. But at the end of the day, zoom out and focus on the big things, which is get high quality inventory onto the marketplace, drive traffic from good channels, and that takes care of a lot of it. And then within that, there's a lot of ways to optimize.
Is it
it's interesting?
Sorry, go ahead. A web-based experience, or do you have an app experience as well?
We have both, yeah.
And do you find that like on the app that like user retention and some of the metrics are better if they're on the app?
Definitely, yeah. So app users are our best users, but conversion there's a lot more friction to get them into the app.
Yeah.
So what we'll typically do is drive you to the web first, get you there, get you to see the experience, and then really focus on converting you to an app user from there. Yeah. Although it varies, like we've had a lot of success with TikTok install campaigns lately. But we definitely see that the app users, whether it's causal or, just basically the people who want to use the product all the time, download the app. I think that's something we're constantly debating, but no doubt the app users are by far our best users and most likely to buy and sell as well, which also drives up their lifetime value.
Yeah. And then another question I was going to ask before was, and sorry, Ethan, I know now you're chopping into it, but you had talked about that chat really seemed to help the experience when you got that added. But I assume that there's a little bit of fear, maybe misguided or maybe real, that the more you enable communication between the buyer and the seller, the easier it is to go off platform for the transaction. How have you guys navigated around that?
Yeah, that definitely is the case. We have a lot of things we do there to try to keep it on platform. Everything from soft reminders like we provide a buyer guarantee, keep your chat on platform. Like that's where you get the value out of this. I think the other thing is that we reduce a lot of friction. So if you go off platform, you now need to like Venmo or PayPal somebody. You also need to create shipping labels. So now the seller has to do a lot of work by going off platform because of it's not just local pickup. It's not, hey, I'll meet and I'll still pay. That's another benefit to the shipping is that it actually keeps you on platform. I think
you're also worried, like, am I going to ship it and not get paid, or am I going to pay and not get the stuff I shipped? And,
exactly. Yeah. So we have I think like we've been able to overcome disintermediation by like solving real problems for buyers and sellers. But, offline businesses, it's tough, right? Like it's much harder.
It's like a 12% insurance policy that you're actually going to have a smooth transaction.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people see that that's worth it.
Yeah.
I think you got to scare one of the two parties into believing that it's dangerous, right? Like, because I know I've had that situation where someone offers to do something off platform, and as long as I'm scared of it, like it stops it there. Or as long as one party is.
Week with neighbor.com, I was getting my daughter some parking at UCLA, and she basically, the guy's like, I decided I'm going to charge a lot more for it, and we've agreed to a price, and then like it just started to feel scammy, and then I start like looking at scams on neighbor.com, and I start seeing that there's a ton of them, and so like maybe I could go direct and hit his price, but I already don't trust the guy, and so it's like I think there's always going to be fear on a platform, but there's even more fear going off the platform.
Totally. And I think if you can, so that, I mean, and that's your opportunity to reinforce trust on both sides. Right. So, I think we've been able to do that pretty successfully. And I think, it was something we thought a lot about in the beginning, but the more we improved the user experience, the less it became an issue.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So I wanted to ask you about the trade-in events, because they seem pretty fascinating to me. And it seems like for a digital business, it's anytime you do something offline, there's got to be a lot of fear and concern. So I'm curious, maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about what those events are, why they've been successful for you, and where you think they'll take you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So the trade-in events really came from two things. One, it was during COVID, a lot of sports were canceled, especially our core sports. And so growth slowed down, and we had to kind of like pump the brakes on a lot of things. And it gave us an opportunity to reset and think about, okay, we've really been addicted to a few growth channels, specifically like Facebook, Instagram, and Google, up for the past couple of years as we were really chasing growth. And what can we do going forward to grow the business without necessarily being so reliant on those performance marketing channels? And at the same time, looking at where's the market headed. And so we talk about fast moving water, and there's this great blog post on find the fast moving water. And for us, we looked at brands and retailers. We're starting to really lean in on resale, of talking about bringing that into their own shopping experience. After I think a long time of thinking that was something they didn't really have any interest in, it cannibalized their market. I think the retailers and brands have really come around on this is a good thing. Customers want this, and you could use it to drive incremental traffic and incremental revenue. And so we started there, and we said, all right, well, if that's where the market's headed, and we want to get off performance marketing channels, and we also need to get more supply, how do we put those things together, come up with a solution that solves our problems of getting more supply, growing faster, but also taps into this need that these retailers and brands have. And so in our space, Dick's Sporting Goods is by far the biggest retailer in the space. And so we had built some relationships with them. We approached them and said, what if customers could walk into your store and bring in their old baseball bat and get paid on the spot for the trade-in value in a Dick's gift card? Is that something that you guys would be interested in doing? And there was a lot of interest in that. And we had the technology by that point to be able to, we have our value guide, and we could determine pricing based on, the recent resale price and how fast things sell. We can buy things with a lot of confidence, knowing how, what price they'll sell at and how long they'll take to sell. So that was where our trade-in event started. We ran one in 2021, and then it went well, and it was awesome. Like we were sitting in a parking lot of a sporting goods store, and as soon as we're done setting up with our tent, a big trade-in event tent, people start walking up with bags of equipment, and very quickly we were like, this is what we thought was out there, and there's a lot of friction in them listing it themselves.
To the local thing too.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you remove the friction around shipping. A lot of people, if you want to sell yourself, we have a great platform for that. But if you don't want to do the work and you still have the stuff, now we have a solution for that too. And so we did one event in 2021. Last year we did a 14 event test in the spring. That went great, and we scaled up to 50 events in the fall, and we're going to do probably about 700 events this year with our retail partners. And the experience for customers is we're usually in your town for 2 to 3 weeks. You get an email from the retailer and from us saying, hey, there's a trade-in event this weekend. Bring in your used sporting goods. We'll pay you in a Dick's Sporting Goods gift card when we work with Dick's. When we work with a few other retail partners as well. You bring up your stuff. We check you in. It takes us about 10 to 15 minutes to evaluate your equipment. While we're doing that, you walk around the store so you can start shopping. And then we send you your quote. Here's what we can pay you for your stuff. And if you accept it, you get paid in the gift card instantly. You could use it in that store visit. And then we get the inventory. While we're quoting it, we're actually listing it. So we have the product ready to be listed onto the marketplace, and then it goes into the marketplace from there, and it resells quickly. So it's been a win for customers, I think, both the retail customers and our customers who participate in the events. And then it's been a win for retailers. They see almost a 2x lift on the in-store spend. So if you spend an average, if the average customer on an average weekend spends $100, once they attend a trade-in event, the average payout, depending on the retailer, it's usually between $70 and $100, and almost all of that ends up being incremental revenue. So instead of spending 100, you spend 170 to 200 because it's free money to you.
Yeah.
And that's big dollars for the retail partners at the end of the day. We reimburse them we cover the trading costs, so there's no hit on their margin.
Yeah.
And then we flip the product for good markup, and it works for us, and we get more inventory onto the marketplace. So it's been really interesting and something we're excited about. But took we had to build the marketplace first to be able to go do this, and then it allowed us to go launch this second phase of the business, which we always hoped to get to, but kind of had to wait for the market to get there and get for ourselves to be able to support it.
Yeah.
So are you pretty careful? Oh, sorry, Sean. Do you have to be pretty careful with what you take in? Because obviously you don't want to warehouse too much stuff, right? So
yeah, so we have a value guide, and basically everything gets processed into a system. We have a price for most things, but there are things that we can't accept, whether for condition, age of the product. And so our value guide is extremely comprehensive, but in certain cases, we do reject product. And what happens in those cases is if it's in good enough condition, we always try to find a local donation partner. So you can donate it we'll donate it on your behalf to a local sports program. And that's been a great additional benefit to it. And then we'll recycle it responsibly. So we have a way to discard the items, and you don't have to take it home with you in those cases. So, but we do reject product. You don't get paid for everything. And, that has allowed us to make sure that we're selling, we don't really have products sitting around because we can be pretty selective about what we take.
Yeah, it's interesting. I speaking of the donation of sports equipment, I was going down to Nicaragua about maybe a year ago, and my friends down there said, "Oh, the baseball team just doesn't have any equipment; they can't afford it. Can you ask some of your neighbors and see if you can bring some stuff down?" And next thing you knew, I was just overwhelmed with with so much youth sporting, youth baseball stuff that it was. In my additional baggage costs, there was quite a bit, but it was pretty awesome to hand it out to kids there. And I'm sure plenty of kids in the US appreciate those donations as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've done stuff locally. I think there's some international programs we're working with. So do a little bit of all that. And we also have an option where we'll buy it from you, but we'll donate the proceeds on your behalf. So in a lot of cases, local programs, they don't need more baseball bats. They actually need jerseys, right? So, but we could turn a baseball bat into cash that you could use to buy a jersey. So we, we have this option where you could do it as a fundraiser, but we still sell it. We still pay you for it, and we still resell it. But then you could use the money how you want to use it, rather than having to now make use of a bunch of hockey skates and hockey sticks that you got.
Oh, that's cool. Very cool. So and you had mentioned Dick's Sporting Goods as being one of the retailers that you work with, and I did notice that you raised some money recently from their venture arm. So I'm curious, was it this program that started that relationship, or vice versa?
Yeah, no. So I think the investment grew out of the business relationship, although they were both kind of in talks the whole time. That was the idea. But I think it's been awesome to have Dick's as an investor and a partner. They're obviously a huge platform in the sport, in the sports world, and we couldn't really think of a better company to be running this with. And I think there's like a couple reasons that they're really into it. I think the first is that it's good for business, right? Like it's not just goodwill. They're seeing a real impact and now at a small scale, and I think over time at a larger scale, of us being able to drive incremental foot traffic and incremental revenue. And it's something that we were uniquely good at. We were the experts in youth sports, and so we were able to work with them on that. I think the other thing is that it's a great customer experience, right? So customers come in, they love it, and they know more and more customers are thinking about secondhand, and so being able to offer that service, I've spent a lot of times in stores over the last year, and the amount of times that you hear like, "Oh, this is so cool that they're offering this now." Like we love this. So I think it's good for that. And then I think the third is that they're a pretty forward-thinking brand in terms of sustainability. And so obviously there's a sustainable piece to this as well. And I think that fits within what they're trying to do on a larger scale. So for a lot of reasons, I think it made sense, and it's been a great partnership so far.
Yeah, it's that kind of gift card dynamic that you talked about. I had a similar. We actually had Viore on as a guest maybe a year or two ago, and I had gotten some clothes for Christmas that were Viore clothes, and next thing you know, I'm returning a lot of them, but I have a credit of maybe like $150, and I'm walking out of there with $300 worth of clothes. And so, I could definitely see, you start seeing stuff you like, and it's that free money. And then you think, well, why choose between this or that? I'll just take them both. And so,
exactly.
Yeah, I can totally see how they benefit from that cycle.
And I think also the fact that it's so, it's such a real-time reward for Dick's, right? It has to make sense. Like the trade-in event, like, if you were selling it as like, hey, this will bring customers in and it'll help you. It's different than saying, we're going to send customers in with a gift card so they can buy more stuff. I mean, it just, and that's really the only, that's the redemption value is right in there. So it seems like it seems like it totally makes sense. And I could imagine a less forward-thinking brand would have trouble with this idea of competing with their own sales. But I think you've created a pretty good relationship where everybody wins, essentially, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it still takes, even with the data of showing that everybody wins, I think you still have two camps of like, well, used business eats into the new business. But I think we have a lot of data. And I think if you look at like even the used car market, you just have two different types of buyers and people who we know like certain people who want to buy new, and like they're just probably, they're not going to buy on Sideline, they're not going to buy used. But those are people actually who we want their stuff. Like they're great sellers because they're buying new all the time. And so, we think that, there's obviously multiple ways to view the world. You could, view it as very zero sum, or you could find synergies of where it may not appear there are that many on the surface. And I think, we've been able to do that here, and I think it's created a win-win-win.
Very cool.
Absolutely. So, this is a business that you've clearly been working on for a while. I think you said 2015, and you even had kind of dabbled in it a bit before. I think a lot of times there's this perception that in a marketplace business that it's really a struggle, and then you figure it out and just explosive growth, and everything can become super easy from there. Is there any truth to that? And if not, what is the truth?
Yeah, I can't say that was our experience. I mean, we've had really, we've had great growth, and I think some of the lists we're on speak to that. But it's and also marketplaces are hard to build. I think that's part of the moat that marketplaces are inherently defensible because they're challenging to build. There's network effects and there's a cold start problem, right? So for us, I think in the beginning, I think every marketplace, whether they're absolute rocket ships or they maybe grow over a longer period of time, you still have to get over the chicken and the egg problem of getting buyers and sellers and continuing to build liquidity. And so for us, like that was the focus, and continued to be the focus for a long time. And yeah, I think like we feel it's been an exciting ride in terms of the growth we've had, but it definitely takes time and persistence to push the rock uphill for a while, and then it rolls downhill for a little bit, and then you got to push it back up. So it's but I think that's part of the fun. Like it's a challenging business. It's intellectually stimulating. You have a lot of different pieces of it. But yeah, we've been at it for a while, and it's been it's had a ton of different challenges, but it's been a fun learning experience along the way.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was that at the very beginning, you and your team, I guess also friends, were able to seed the business, seed the inventory yourselves. How important do you think that? Like it just struck me that that's really interesting that because getting the inventory with a chicken and egg problem, seeding one side of it makes a lot of sense. How important do you think that was? And do you think you could have done it without it?
Yeah, I think it was critical in the beginning. Like convincing like people who were at the top of the sport to take the time to list inventory on the marketplace. Like if we didn't have connections, I think it would have been really hard, even if it was a great product. Like we needed, and that unique inventory then drew in a ton of people. We were able to post that into the Facebook groups where people were talking about, lacrosse equipment, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. They click over, and it's like, oh, if the best college players are selling their stuff here, then I should sell my stuff here too. And it also set the precedent with like, it's not cheap used stuff. It's really cool, high quality used stuff. So there's all these benefits to it. I think it was critical. I mean, it's very much it was a polygram, like do things that don't scale approach, where, we were really in the weeds, both in terms of getting our friends to list stuff and doing things for them to make sure the inventory went out and we set good customer experiences. And then, and like continue to do versions of that for a long time, like whether it was posting to other marketplaces, posting to Facebook groups, to get people into the platform without having to spend a lot of money. We were able to reach $1 million GMV run rate with spending $0 on marketing, but through that type of growth hacking of finding high quality pockets of inventory and then finding where people were already, like where are the eyeballs that would be interested in that type of stuff, and then that facilitated the transactions. But it definitely took the connections to get it started.
What about these like new NIL deals? Is there any play in that for you?
Yeah, so the name, image, and likeness stuff has been interesting. We've done some stuff with college athletes. Previously, we had focused on when you just graduated, so you were done and you were able to get rid of it. Now there's like transfer portal stuff, which is interesting. We still have to be careful about like when do you own the inventory? Some schools take it back, some don't. But NIL has opened up a lot of new opportunities, specifically around like influencer deals and getting so it's it's kind of a new area for acquisition that we really haven't been able to play in before, that we're testing a lot of things. And what we found is that it's not necessarily the best players on the field who are the best partners on this. It's actually the content creators. Like if you're on a good team and a good content creator, doesn't really matter if you're last on the bench. Like you might be the better partner for us
than the top player. A little bit more. Yeah, my daughter's a D1 athlete who just went through a transfer portal, and it's just amazing, like just how much. It's not so much sports gear, but just, the sponsors of the programs and just how much they just shower them with. She showed me, sent a picture like a week ago of just a pile of Nike clothes, for example. I know it's not quite the equipment side of things, but
we sell a ton of apparel. So, and that type of stuff, like, alumni will eat up. We have a whole fan shop section where you can shop any college and pro team. And so you have fans and players buying and selling from each other. So yeah, like we love excess inventory. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm sure there's kind of rules around what they can and can't do there, but it's just amazing, like just how much stuff they shower on the students. She went from an Adidas school to a Nike school, and then obviously when you go in the transfer portal and you leave a program, like you don't want to be wearing that program stuff around anymore.
Exactly. So. You have like no very little emotional connection to it at that point.
Right. So Ethan, you got any more questions before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just real quick. I'm curious, it sounds like it's been a great run and it continues to be exciting and interesting. If you continue on this road to success, 3 years from now, you look back and you're like, we just killed it. This is awesome. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think the goal for us is always to, like, North Star vision is be the largest sports marketplace out there, right? Be a household name in sports where everyone thinks of to sell their stuff and to buy their stuff. We think that's a much bigger version of the business than we have today, where we have, tens of millions of athletes, sports families, and fans buying and selling, probably billions of dollars worth of equipment, apparel, footwear, but with each other. And so, I think it will look similar in some ways and just a lot larger, of more awareness and people, a bigger community of people buying and selling. The product will continue to evolve, and there's all this stuff we want to add, local pickup on the list as well. But I think so. It's continued growth of the core business, and then really the evolution of this trade-in element, where our goal is to really power the circular economy in sports. We want to enable resale wherever athletes shop or play. So not just at a sporting goods store, but also at your local hockey rink, at a baseball training facility. You'll see Sideline Swap Trade-in opportunities, whether it's a pop-up event or, a more of a technology solution where it's an always on, trade-in kiosk where you could walk up and trade in your equipment. So I think those are the things that we're excited about. And I think we have a great tailwind right now with the secondhand market. Recommerce is very much in vogue. And I think that's because customers, think it makes sense from a pricing standpoint of not having to spend so much, especially in more challenging economic times, and then selling your stuff. But also there's the sustainability element that I think everybody buys into. So, it's been fun to see that momentum building. It wasn't quite, I think in the beginning we had to convince a lot of people that people would buy and sell used sporting goods online. I think it's becoming more and more obvious. And so, yeah, I think like it's riding that momentum and making sure we're putting Sideline Swap in position to take advantage of all these opportunities as they open up.
Yeah. How do you actually promote the in-person events, like at a retailer?
So if you're on a retailer's email list, you'd hear about it. Okay. So that they do some promotion for us. Yeah. We do in-store. They'll do in-store promotion as well leading up to the event. Then we do everything from paid advertising on social media, in micro markets, to hitting our own list and app notifications, to testing things like you might get a postcard in the mail if you're around that store, telling you to come into the event, and that's actually been pretty successful too. So it's we're definitely trying everything in terms of finding out about it. But if you're a Sideline Swap user and you're in that zip code, that or a retail customer of that store, that's generally where you'd hear about it.
I could see someone on your site clicking something that says, "What if I don't want to deal with shipping?" and getting added to a list. We do have local events where you can just drop it off and we'll sell it for you, like that.
Yeah, if you go to our sell page, you'll see like, here's your cell phone, a little link underneath says find a trade-in event. So you can totally we're trying, but it's like we don't have 100% coverage yet, right? We're in 5 cities this weekend, or in 10 next weekend, but yeah, I mean,
more like,
I think that's the idea.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the idea.
So a question that we love to end every interview with is asking you really, like, what do you feel like you understand about growth now that you may not have understood a couple of years ago, or in your case, even just when you were getting started with the business? Is there some big growth learning that you feel like you've developed in the last few years?
Yeah, I think the big learning for us has really been about being willing to take some of these bigger shots, right? Like, first understanding, like, what are you uniquely good at in the market? And then who can you work with who has a lot more scale in order to provide a service or value add to them or to their customers, and, benefit, find that win-win that we found here in our trade-in program.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know how easy it is to replicate across markets, but for us, obviously there's the constant optimization, within the product and within our marketing channels. But I think when we look back at what really drove step function growth in the business, it was some of the stuff that we kind of knew had to happen, whether it was like a new inventory integration to get more inventory into the marketplace, or something like trade-in to drastically reduce friction and be able to go get inventory from customers where they are. I think it's a little bit counterintuitive to some of the more iterative growth strategies that you see, but sometimes like that, you kind of know it intuitively that that's where you need to get to, and you got to find a way to do it, with the resources that you have, and not like make an all-in bet on this one thing, but also be willing to make bigger bets and hopefully unlock step function growth along the way. So I think it's that's been an interesting learning and something we've obviously benefited from lately.
Brendan, this has absolutely been fantastic. It's really an interesting business, and I think the way you've approached it, I think will give our audience a lot of interesting things to think about. Especially, for me, a couple of the big takeaways were, again, like, I think the way you started this, seeding the market, using what you were really good at and knew, starting with lacrosse because it's what you knew best, I think made a lot of sense. And it seems to have gotten you over probably a lot of some of those early hurdles with an MVP and trying to, get over what is going to naturally not be as tightened up as you probably would like. And just what you said here about looking for win-wins. We've seen a lot of companies that we've had the opportunity to chat with, where what seems to really drive their business is that their goals are very much in line with their customers. Their growth depends on their customers' growth. And it seems like you think about that not only with your customers buying and selling products, but also with your partners. So it's really good stuff. And I really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us here. Sean, do you have any other key takeaways?
No, I think you nailed them. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Brendan. We appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me, Sean and Ethan. It was great talking with you guys.
All right. Absolutely. And for everyone tuning in, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Breakout Growth Podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're at it, subscribe so you never miss a show. Until next week.